Hey, this week we continue to cover the age verification apocalypse that may or may not be coming. EA is talking about anti-cheat for Linux. There's a reason everybody hates Ubuntu, but maybe not a good one. Firefox is previewing unintentionally. Nova, Wine 11.4 is out, and Linux from scratch, number 13, has made some changes that not everybody is in love with. You don't want to miss it, so stay tuned.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is the Untitled Linux Show, episode 245, recorded Saturday, March the 7th. Not a supernova. Hey folks, it is Saturday, and you know, as always, what that means. It is time for the Untitled Linux Show. We're going to talk about Linux, some hardware. We're going to geek out over it all. It's going to be a lot of fun. Glad you're here with us. It is not just me. We've got the whole crew, our normal guys. We got Rob, Ken, and Jeff, and we're going to have some fun today. I'm going to start by saying that right after the show, I'm going to shut everything down and pack everything up because first thing tomorrow morning, I am heading out and getting on a plane, and I'm going to Embedded World in Germany, and that's where I will be this next week. So when you guys, if you watch on the download, when you see this, I will be there. So if any of our listeners are in Embedded World, come and check out the Meshtastic booth and say hello. Would love to chat with you. Other than that, we've got a full week's worth of news. We were talking to the Discord beforehand, and one of our loyal listeners said, "Man, it's been kind of a boring news week in Linux news." I was like, no, there's some stuff going on. At the very least, I know there's fallout from the age verification stuff, and Rob has been all over that. And we're going to let Rob take it away and go through some of the various responses that we've seen to this new California law. Rob, what's the scoop?
All right. Well, to start off, I will not be in Embedded World this week. I will just be in bed in this world this week. So anyway, last week we talked about many of the new age verification laws popping up in places like California and potentially coming to other areas like Colorado, and I think New York happened after last week, but that's another one that's potentially coming our way. This week, let's talk about what some of the distros are saying. The theme across the board is that this is vague, it's messy. Nobody in the Linux world is excited about turning the operating system into an age-checking gatekeeper. I'll start off with System 76. They've probably been maybe the most direct about this. CEO Carl Ritchell argues these laws are easy to work around and miss the real problem entirely. In his words, effectiveness is lost with the California and Colorado style approach. And with New York's broader proposal, liberty is lost. His point is simple. If a kid wants around an OS level age setting, he probably can. They can use a virtual machine, reinstall the OS, or find another workaround. System 76's broader argument is that this becomes more about control and data sharing than actual protection. In a quote from a blog post of his, he says, "If there is any solace in these two laws, it's that they don't have any real restrictions. There is no actual age verification," kind of somewhat what Jonathan, I think, was saying last week. Mm-hmm. And he says, to go on, whoever installs the operating system or created the account simply says what age they are or what age they want to be. They can lie. They will lie. They're being encouraged to lie for fear of being restricted to a nerfed internet. I myself, I've told my kids, and when he's like couldn't get on something, he was like, in my opinion, what it was, he's old enough. I'm like, just change your age. Just put your age as this. Anyway, Carl's sentiment really kind of mirrors what I said last week, that these laws don't work, not the way they're designed. Ubuntu's response has been much more cautious. Canonical says it is aware of the California law and is reviewing it with legal counsel, but right now, there are no concrete plans for how or even whether Ubuntu will change. This is a pretty important signal. One of the biggest Linux vendors in the world is not rushing to announce compliance. It is basically saying, we hear this, we're studying it, but we don't have an answer yet. Fedora, also cautious, but in a slightly different way. Fedora project leader Jeff Spaleta said he wanted to avoid speculation until he had a chance to sync with legal help, and later added, this has ecosystem-wide impact. The big guys want legal help, makes sense. Goes on, that really gets to the heart of it. This is not just a Fedora problem or an Ubuntu problem. If the law sticks, they could ripple across distros, app stores, desktop environments, and software repositories. And, there's always a slippery slope argument. And then there is Midnight BSD. I've never heard of this one, but they have a blunt. They have the bluntest reaction of all. Instead of building a compliance system or finding ways to, get around it or make it work or whatever, it just says California residents are not authorized to use Midnight BSD for desktop use starting January 1st, 2027, because the project does not have the development time or a plan to deal with the law. So, you guys just can't use it. So right now, the distro world is landing in kind of three camps: the legal review, the uncertainty, or the complete open resistance. And there's probably some out there that aren't responding because it's like, yeah, whatever, it's a bunch of big nothingness. But obviously those people aren't saying anything because it's a bunch of big nothingness to them. And well, I guess that's where some of them stand. I don't know who it is, but many are also just hoping the dumb law gets overturned at some point in appeals or somewhere else. And that's been a sentiment from some of them too. So, they're all looking at it, all thinking about where they're going to go, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think it's useful to keep in mind that, like, even worst case, these laws, I've not looked at the New York law, but the California law, it's not doing anything like you must take a picture before you can create an account. Hold your ID up and take a picture. And like, there's some online services where that's what you get to do. That's not the way this would work. I had another thought and it's gone.
An interesting thing about System 76 also is, the law potentially coming to Colorado. System 76 is based in Colorado, so it may be harder for them to avoid as they could with other states potentially.
Maybe.
Yeah, I watched Lunduke. He said that Omarchi, basically, I won't repeat it, but that distribution basically told them to go pound sand.
And I'd love to see how they're going to track everybody that's actually working from a Linux from scratch distribution.
Yeah, I guess that's the really interesting thing. Would this apply to the kernel itself? They have a California nexus.
The Linux kernel is not an operating system.
No. Anybody can add the kernel to their own.
I know that, and you know that, but there's no guarantee that a judge or a DA would understand that.
We'll all be going to herd,
I guess. I will just say real quick. This is the thought I had that it flew away and then it flew back. The response of, we don't have any statement on this. We are currently working on it internally with legal counsel. That is absolutely the sort of thing that you get from a corporation who knows that, the moment you open your mouth and you say something before your lawyers have responded, you're going to get yourself in trouble because the corporation will be held accountable for that potentially. And so that's a very common thing. I have no comment until we hear back from legal. That's what I would say.
No comment.
Exactly.
And as a end user, all I can say is, I'm not going to give you my age. I don't want you to know how old I am.
They don't have enough numbers in there.
I was going to say, we already know, Ken, you're old. It's fine.
Yeah. You're going to miss out on a lot of senior
I just
discounts.
put OLD.
OLD.
I'm looking forward to that senior discount on Linux, though.
Yeah, there you go. Senior discount Linux. All right, Jeff, why do we all hate Ubuntu so much? What's the secret?
Well, most of the time on the show, we talk about factual articles, what's happening in the kernel, what new revision of software is out, or, other factual things. This time, my first story, it's simply an opinion piece. And the opinion piece is on why so many Linux users love to hate on Ubuntu. Now, the author does begin with the history, where the beginning, it was, for a long time considered the easiest Linux to set up. And it was the first Linux that pretty much worked without too much fiddling around in the command line. It lived up to its old slogan, Linux for human beings, and being simple and polished and easy to install, and drivers worked and the interface felt friendly, and, you could just get on with your life, and side note by yours truly, I still have it as one of the best distributions for a brand new user. And I remember the first time I used it, I was sitting down, I had my drink and my snacks, because I was used to other versions of Linux that, okay, I'm going to spend an afternoon configuring files, and I installed it and it just worked. This was 6.04, I think, or maybe it was 7.04. It was back a ways. Now, so the article then goes in, where did things start to fall apart? Now, the author doesn't point to a single thing, but kind of a few different choices. So there's kind of a conglomeration of things. Now, Canonical is the parent company of Ubuntu. And so Ubuntu is both a community project and a Canonical product. And ultimately, Canonical makes the big calls. So over the years, some of those calls rub people the wrong way, such as the Amazon affiliate search results during the Unity era, the closed source backend of the Snap Store, which, they have been opening some of that stuff up, some of the Snap stuff up, choosing Snaps over Flatpaks, AppArmor over SE Linux, and other decisions that they kind of felt like the not invented here syndrome. It's like Canonical just couldn't handle anything that they didn't invent. Now, even though Canonical's reverse course in some of the controversial choices, the distrust has been hard to shake, but, there's still people that say Ubuntu has settled into what some people are calling boringly stable. For, many people, that's exactly what they want. Some people just don't care about the latest thing. They just want the thing to always work. The author does go on to say one of the biggest reasons also they got mocked today is snaps. And, he does point to some faults in snaps, but he also points out that snaps have improved dramatically. Startup times are better. Integration is smoother. And for many apps, snaps offer easy installation, automatic updates, and simple rollbacks. So it's not as bad as it used to be. And most importantly, the author calls out, Ubuntu doesn't force you to use snaps, Flatpaks, native packages, and other formats. Do what?
I said it kind of does, but I'll comment on that later.
Okay. But you're not forced. You can still get around it. The author does admit that Ubuntu isn't the perfect distribution, but which one is? You can always find something to nitpick about, use case dictates code need. For the final thoughts, they wrap up by saying Ubuntu gets a lot of backlash because it's a visible, familiar, and, a lot of people started their Linux journey there, and it's an easy target. But despite the means and criticisms, Ubuntu continues to do the quiet, unglamorous work and keep the Linux ecosystem moving forward. Now, that's the author saying that. I'm not my personal opinion, but I would vacillate a little bit on that one. It may not be perfect, may never reclaim its early days of glory, but it has earned its place among the giants and still proving its value every day. And, he says, maybe it doesn't deserve all the hate. But take a look at the article linked in the show notes, as I summarized a ton of the article and left out a lot of details. So to look for all the full points of the author and see if you agree, have a look and happy reading.
There's one thing that you didn't mention. I'm not sure I saw it in the article either, and I think it's worth pointing out is we Linux folks, we tend to be a hit back at the man kind of mentality. And once Ubuntu became like the man, yeah, he became the man. Then some percentage of us just couldn't put up with that anymore, and we had to go be more on the edge somehow. And so I think, like, legitimately, I think that's part of it.
So also, let me touch on that forcing. Okay, so maybe forcing kind of isn't the right word. They definitely are tricking. When somebody does an apt install, you're expecting the native Debian style package. And when Ubuntu redirected certain packages, I think it was Firefox or was it Chrome? It's probably both now. I don't even know.
And there's a few others, but yeah, Firefox.
Yeah. So I think Firefox was the first one. And, when you go an apt install, you know what? If you don't want me to get it supply it natively, just tell me this is not available. Would you like to install as a snap? Don't all of a sudden install it as a snap and then boom, I have Firefox installed as a snap and I did app install. And as far as forcing, there was even, I think it was Popey who had a open source project called Unsnap, I think it was. And I was following that. I wanted to have that as a show tip at some point, but it kind of didn't really go very far. It maybe kind of worked at the beginning, but I tried it later on. It had problems. Anyway, I think what that kind of almost tells you is somebody who worked at Ubuntu in the past for Canonical had a hard time setting up a project to rip snaps out of it. That's pretty, okay, it's not forced. There's always a way around everything, but it's pretty heavy-handed. It's pretty hard to get out of.
I would give you that they're heavily suggesting you use snaps. And it's a lot of the defaults.
Like the mafia heavily suggests you pay your share.
That's a nice computer you got there. It'd be a shame if something were to happen to it.
Exactly.
Those are some pretty nice knees you got.
Yeah, it's pretty close. There's always a way around everything. Like if and when they get the age verification, nobody will be forcing that because you can always get around it. It's Linux. Nothing's forced anywhere. But yeah.
Well, and I'll be honest, one of the reasons I did leave Kubuntu on my gaming machine was because Firefox, with the snap and stuff, it started. I was running into the firewall or the internal security sandboxing. Yeah. And it was like I had problems getting the hardware acceleration working. And rather than go, I thought, Rob was egging me on to try something else. So I jumped and I'm still here. So I've got my main server still on Kubuntu LTS, and then I've got my main system, I'm doing cutting edge.
That all said, I still use Ubuntu on my servers, and I still recommend it to new users all the time. Doesn't mean I don't like things about it.
Which version are you recommending to them?
The latest stable.
Oh, you mean like Ubuntu? I say it
well as the. Do you recommend they go with an LTS or the latest bleeding edge?
Oh, I always recommend an LTS. I say Ubuntu. If you really like the Windows interface, do Kubuntu, as it's more Windows-y by default, but they're all configurable.
I recommend the latest stable just so that they get the more up-to-date hardware drivers, because I'd hate for them to load LTS and then find out the current, that kernel version didn't have the latest hardware.
True. All right. Well, speaking of Windows, Ken, there's a sort of a bone thrown to Linux users that want some Windows compatibility. What's new in Wine?
Well, we can thank Bobby Borisov for writing about the Wine project releasing version 11.14. Or excuse me, 11.4. Now, according to Bobby, a key update is the re-implementation of the SAX reader in the MS XML. Now, this modernizes XML parsing using Microsoft's XML technologies. Wine developers also improved audio performance by optimizing resampling in direct sound, increasing efficiency, and reducing overhead when processing audio streams. Now, Wine 11.4 also lays the groundwork for implementing CFGM GR32, what's also known as the Window Configurations Manager API, which enables applications to interact with hardware and system settings. Wine 11.4 improves Unix time zone matching, which is going to really be handy for us that actually depend on that clock that appears in our panel on the screen. Wine 11.4 release notes also list various changes since 11.3, including updates to Lithuanian and Polish translations, and resolve issues in Bluetooth testing protocols for Windows 10 64-bit versions of 1507 and 1809. I'll let y'all look up to see how old those are, by the way. Now, you can always read Bobby's article for more details, to include the links to the change notes so you can see the date of those versions I mentioned.
Been around for quite a few years, eh?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, considering Windows 10 has finally reached end of life, I would say so.
Yep. I'm looking through the actual change log here, trying to see if there's anything that really sticks out. Looks like just a lot of little things. So far, at least, no huge changes have popped out at me.
No, that'll happen when they start trying to incorporate Windows 11.
Yeah.
I just hope they don't incorporate the requirement to set up a Microsoft account.
I saw somebody post that Windows 12 is going to be based on Linux, but locked down so you won't get the benefits of Linux.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So does that mean you can do a Windows from scratch eventually?
I mean, if you're willing to run an old version of it, you can build Windows from scratch now. They released the, Windows 98 source code?
95?
95 or 98, yeah. You can build the old stuff. All right. Well, enough about Windows. Let's get back to Linux. Rob, you've got a piece here on the next version of Gnome, and we're going to jump to that right after this.
Gnome 50 is almost here, and the release candidate has now landed ahead of the full release that is planned for March 18th. That's not too far away. That means one of Linux's flagship desktops is just about ready for prime time, and this update looks focused on the kind of improvements that make the whole desktop feel more modern, and I always love a modern desktop. Some of the biggest changes are under the hood, but they are the kind that matter. Mutter is bringing better NVIDIA performance, so Jeff, you'd be happy with that one. Better HDR support. Who wouldn't be happy with that? And a new SDR native color mode. GNOME Remote Desktop now supports explicit DMA buffer synchronization and enable zero copy, Vulkan, and VA API rendering by default. There's also HDR screen sharing support, WP color management V2 support, and other core improvements that continue pushing GNOME toward a more polished and capable desktop experience. And it is worth pointing out that if you want the full benefits of GNOME 50 and where GNOME 50 is heading, Wayland is a necessity. All these features like performance, HDR, it's just a requirement for a modern desktop. And a lot of the most important work around display technology, graphics, and desktop responsiveness is happening there. And GNOME continues to build with that future in mind. They know where the future is and they're building to it. Beyond the deeper platform changes, there are also some nice user-facing improvements. GNOME Calendar now supports arrow key navigation in month view. GNOME software remembers its window size between restarts. GNOME Maps improves transit transitions. And Orca gets updates that should make reading long pages and following chats smoother for screen readers. There is one notable delay. Session Save and Restore has been pushed back to a future release. So that long-awaited feature, we'll have to wait a little longer for another day. Even so, GNOME 50 is shaping up to be a strong release, a beautiful milestone in their progression towards the future. And the focus here is clearly on performance, accessibility, graphics, and modern desktop capabilities. And with the final release just around the corner, GNOME 50 looks like another solid step forward for the Linux desktop and our Wayland feature.
Does the session save and restore work on X11?
I
think it might.
So let's cut that out.
This is one of the irritations that a lot of us have with Wayland, is that there are some things that are needed to make features like session save and restore, and the gatekeepers of the Wayland protocol have consistently gone, no, you're not allowed to have that, or sure, we could do that. Let's spend 3 years fiddling through all of the minutia about how to make it work. And there are pull requests over on the Wayland protocol that have been open for years.
I mean, who shuts down their desktop session anyway?
Well, the reality is that it crashes, and it'd be nice if everything's opened back up after a reboot, after a crash.
Okay, that's pretty rare in my experience, but
usually that's what caused the crash, is what was open.
Well, yes, because we're fiddling around doing something.
Though, just curious, this is GNOME 50 we're talking about that's going to be coming out soon. How old is GNOME actually?
When was the first GNOME release?
Oh,
the first official initial release was March 3rd, 1999 for GNOME 1.0.
I told you, late 90s. And Ken, why did you ask the question if you already knew? How rude.
To lead into it.
He's like a lawyer. Never ask a question if you don't know the answer. The first thing they teach you at lawyer school.
Now, the development of GNOME started back in August of 1997. So that's a long gestation period. Is that the term to use?
That'll work. Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking GNOME 50. Wow, they're about due to totally redo the interface and torque everybody off again.
I thought they did that every 10
every 5 years
or so. Yeah. Yep. Now, at some point, are they going to give up on this numbering scheme and go back to, the next one's going to be like 6.0? And then after that'll be known as 6.1? Or are we stuck with the 50s?
KDE was released before GNOME was even started development. 1996, about a year before GNOME even started.
Yep. Been around for a long time.
Yep.
All right. Let's see now. Debian and AI. Ooh, Jeff, I saw this story. Interesting stuff going on here. Take it away. Tell us about it. And then I have thoughts.
Well, this is not just AI. So this is a whole set of notes from, basically it was an update on the 5th of March from Andreas Titel, who's the Debian project leader. And there's several topics which he posted about. It's one gigantic email. The first point, was talking about Debian needing to become more diverse. And to quote Andreas, when we speak about diversity in Debian, we often focus on gender and geographic distribution. Both remain important. A project that aims to serve users worldwide should reflect different backgrounds, perspectives, and lived experiences. But diversity also includes generational diversity. We need contributors at different stages in life, people bringing decades of experience and people just starting their technical journeys. A healthy mix ensures continuity, fresh ideas, mentorship, and long-term sustainability. Now, I did say diversity does not happen automatically. It requires awareness, openness, and active effort. It requires us to make space for newcomers, to value different communication styles, and to ensure that contributing feels possible for people in different circumstances. Now, Andreas then tied this into retaining contributors and the need to thank them better. So he said, in Debian, a changelog entry might feel like sufficient acknowledgement for someone contributing for their first time. However, an explicit thank you can make a real difference. Debian runs on volunteer energy, and a few words of encouragement cost a little, but they have a lasting impact. And he also then went in and gave an example where someone made some very good contributions, code, and other cleanups for the very first time. And that made him think of better ways to try to keep those high quality contributors, because they're having problems with getting enough people to contribute. That's why they want younger people. They want they're reaching out and trying to get people to stay longer, keep contributing. He then took the discussion and moved it to AI, and should those submissions be allowed? Now, he did go into a lot of details about, saying AI is a rather broad term for many different tools, and some that the kernel has used for some time, that people think, well, I don't know if that's AI, but other people say, yeah, they kind of fall under AI. So where that line is gets to be a bit fuzzy. And, he talked about several people who were having the discussion on the topic and summarized how some various points they'd each brought up. And, and even talked about how the tools and how code development changes over time. And, not using modern tools doesn't make them go away, but instead limits the benefits of which Debian could get from those tools. And, there was a lot of subtleties in when he was discussing too of, well, which tools, how much can you use them? How, he mentioned, sometimes he uses them for translation. Does that make it bad? It's a hard line to draw. And he said his personal thoughts were based on a certain principle. AI-based contributions are acceptable only if humans remain fully responsible for quality, legality, and review, which I that's kind of where I fall as well. Next, thanks were given to the DFSG team, which is a team which vets new submissions and determines if a package can make it into the Debian archives. Basically does it meet all of Debian standards and license legality, and they've been doing a really good job. So he called them out a little bit, that they've been chewing through a lot of backlogs that they'd had. Then they had a summary of the Debian Med Sprint, which he acknowledged that the sprint was a success for the work done, but he did say that they didn't achieve the goal of engaging upstream developers and potential new contributors. He said, acknowledging that certain things weren't really a success will also help with making corrections to change that in the future. And, he had a few suggestions on how to do that. Basically, we can't correct a mistake until we admit we have a mistake or we have a gap. Finally, Andreas said he's not going to run for the Debian project leader spot again, and he was encouraging people to step up and take the helm. He mentioned that it's hard work, but rewarding, and that, the turnover in the position is needed to keep the project fresh and healthy. He's very much of we need some new blood, and it's time for somebody else to take the helm. Take a look at the article linked in the show notes, and in that article, you will find a link to the original mailing list email. And like I said, the actual email is probably 7 times longer than the story I did here. So, as you can guess, I left out a lot of details and points. So I encourage everyone to read the article linked in the show notes, and then follow it and read the original to get the full understanding of what Andreas was saying.
Yeah, I saw a comment on this that I actually quite agreed with, and that is, I am annoyed that this call for age diversity is sort of couched in this, and forgive me, but this woke language, because It gets old. But there is actually a need for a project to have both old and young people as a part of it. And so like the central point there is absolutely true. And it's something that people are thinking about in the kernel, people are thinking about in various open source projects, because you do need young people to take over the project for when your old people get too old and die. It's just one of the facts of life. So that I'm glad that they are thinking about that, and that's a very real thing that every project that's been around. We were just talking about how long KDE and Nova have been around. Every project that's been around for that sort of, you're beginning to measure it in decades. You got to start thinking about that.
Yeah, and you got to think, the younger generations, the ones coming up with a lot of times usage of new tools, new programming methodologies, new dynamics that maybe the old timers don't have, and there is a better way.
No, stay off my lawn with your fancy AI junk.
Yell at the clouds. Yell at the clouds.
Indeed. I know that there's a lot that could be done with it when someone is skilled at using these tools, but man, I'm face to face on a daily basis with the mess that it makes.
Don't give an AI to a kid.
So I deal with it all the time at work, and yeah, I mean, to me, it's just a double-edged sword. And I think he really hit it when he said basically someone has to be responsible for the output, because I've made it do wondrous things and speed up my workflow tremendously. But I've also had it just do really boneheaded things as well. And you just have to kind of, trust but verify kind of thing, double buddy check it to make sure that the output is real.
Get a second pair of eyes.
I think Jeff, where you and your company uses it, you've got the advantage that there's somebody writes the checks for these people. And so it may not be you directly, but you can essentially go to somebody's manager and say, look, this kid is sending me junk reports for 3 weeks in a row. Go tell him to knock it off with the AI. Whereas we have, 500 pull requests come in that are, basically anonymous because we've never heard of any of these people, and they're all AI. And it's like, you can go out and say, stop it with the AI. And you're basically yelling at clouds. You've got some accountability and some retribution, some repercussions at a business like where you guys are at that the rest of the open source community doesn't necessarily.
It's funny
True.
how I'm always the person on here saying, yay, AI, and all that, and arguing for it. Yet just today or yesterday, I'm on a post somewhere where somebody's like, is it even worth learning to program with AI being a thing?
Oh, especially with AI.
Well, I basically, my response was like, yes, somebody still has to be there to review and check and correct and adjust it. And then I couldn't believe how many people I had arguing with me that, it can correct itself. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't mean it's always going to. I mean,
yeah, it's like asking a 5-year-old to babysit a 4-year-old.
Yeah, that's what it is when you let Rob use AI. Even the most bullish people that I know about AI still make the point that we're not sure, because AI works right now. It works really well as like an intern to junior programmer, but to really get good results out of it, you still have to have a senior programmer running it. And so guys like Randall make this point, and then we'll ask or make the statement, I don't know how future generations will then get from everybody being beginners to, like, how do you get new senior programmers if you don't have to go through that junior phase, if AI is doing all of that work for you? And like, those are the people that are bullish on this, that think that it is great, are still wondering, how do we make this work? So I'm worried about things.
Even someday, I don't know, 100 years, 200 years, 500 years, whatever it is in the future, when AI can do all this all by itself, it's going to break and somebody's going to need to be around and know how to.
And nobody will know how to fix it.
I've read that sci-fi novel. That's how the human race ends up knocking stones together to make fire again.
Yeah, exactly, mate. And that really applies to so many things.
So it makes you wonder how many times we've actually got to the point where we had AI around.
I don't know. I guess I see it as just you're going to have programmers that are going to learn to program, but they won't spend as much time programming, and they're going to be more kind of doing code architecture, going in and because some of it too is complex projects. You still need somebody to go in and go, okay, you can't just say, Claude, here's this extremely complex thing, make it. Mm-hmm. You got to have somebody in there, we're going to write the different modules and how they're going to interact and how, and like I said, kind of reviewing and overseeing the output.
I guess the hesitation is how does a programmer develop that sense of taste? This is something Torvalds talks about a lot. Is having good taste as a programmer. How does a programmer develop that without actually having spent the time writing the code?
And just to get to a more basic question, I'm going to go and ask, how many of y'all remember when you were in school having to learn the multiplication table or memorize them to be more accurate?
I have memories of doing the multiplication table, yeah.
Are they still having kids memorize the multiplication tables?
I think so.
My kids will. My kids did.
Okay.
I know my kids are working through their additions right now, but multiplication
at home,
table, I think. Well, yes. We're kind of oddballs here. All right, let's move towards something else in the Debian world. But what happens when you put Debian on ARM? And we're going to let Ken talk about Armbian, but we're going to do it right after this.
Jonathan, this week we can thank Bobby Borisov, Marcus Nestor, and George Whittaker for all writing about the latest release of Armbian 26.2. It adds support for new ARM boards and chips, including Space MIT, MusePi Pro, Redza Rock 4D, Orange Pi RV2, Orange Pi 4A, WayDroid M2, Lamoda R1, Caddis Mine, Orange Pi 6 Plus, Minis Forum MS-R1, Newmaker-IoT-MA35D1-A1, Spacemint Muse Book, Friendly Elec NanoPi 02, DG SVR 865 Tiny, and Radza E24C. And if I've completely lost everyone, I do apologize. But Armbian 26.2 also introduces board level extension to mask Wayland desktop sessions. Cinnamon desktop builds for UEFI. Gnome desktop builds for stable targets. Edge branch support to community targets. Support for KDE Neon desktop builds. RISC-V XFCE desktop support. And support for Linux kernel 6.18 LTS on stable targets. While the latest 6.19 kernel is now supported on the Edge branch. According to Marcus, the Armbian devs were busy modernizing the product's infrastructure and build tools, as well as cleaning up and optimizing Armbian's code base. According to Bobby, version 26.2 introduces a board-level extension to, as I said, mask the Wayland desktop sessions. And according to George, the release strengthens Armbian's position as one of the most versatile operating systems for single-board computers. Now, as always, more details are available in Bobby, Marcus, and George's articles, and you can actually read what I was trying to say for the various boards that I was covering earlier there.
I just think it's hilarious the alphabet soup of board names, and the various crazy things that they call these. The naming scheme of some of these guys is just hilarious.
They're actually easier to read than say.
Yes.
Do they have someone from the USB committee join them for naming?
No, I just think they were copying them.
So the most interesting thing here to me is that they're doing KDE Neon builds for these ARM boards, which is pretty interesting if you want to run up-to-date KDE code. That is pretty interesting.
And also being able to do that masking for the Wayland desktop systems.
Mm-hmm. I interviewed the Armbian guys a few months back and talked to them about what they were doing then, and just the number of boards that they support is wild. You've got hundreds of them. It's crazy.
5 pages worth of names.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, and all of them are about as much fun as the ones that Ken just read out for us.
Depends what font you use, Ken.
The smallest font possible would get it into 5 pages.
Oh my. Maybe the smallest legible font. Anyway,
it all makes sense in WYSIWYG.
I don't know that I've ever ran Armbian on anything. I don't know if I have or not. I can't say for sure. I don't think I have. Raspberry Pi OS on a lot of devices, a lot of Raspberry Pis.
What's on the Pine Book?
I don't know. I don't have a Pine Book.
I do. I have the original Pine Book.
Well, what was on it or is on it?
I don't know.
Yeah, shouldn't you be the one answering that?
I don't know what it was. It was Linux.
Pine
It
OS.
wasn't an FPGA, was it?
No, it's not. Some Pine. They probably called it Pine OS, and it was probably something else with the skin on it. I don't know. That's the thing. A lot of these don't actually ship with Armbian. That's not. It tends to not be the distro that like whatever company that makes the thing will use. They'll use something else like Arch, or sometimes it's Ubuntu. Sometimes it's Debian. I've seen Linux Mint before. They'll ship with.
And how old in a version?
Yeah, usually ancient. Usually an ancient kernel.
I should get my Pine Book working again.
Yeah.
Are they up? Are they starting to see 6.0 at least versions of the kernel coming out? Well,
it depends on which one you're talking about. I've not bought one of these single boards for a while. I've moved my attention on to other embedded devices that have intrigued me recently.
I'll say it's not
communicate.
Go ahead, Ken.
That communicate to other devices.
Oh yeah, that's where a lot of my attention has been. What were you saying, Jeff?
Oh, I was going to say, I almost did a story. It's not ARM or anything or RISC, but it's the Zima board 2. They got their little home mini server out as well.
Isn't that got an Intel in it?
Yeah, that's why I said it's not a RISC or ARM.
Yeah. No.
But
right.
The small little form factor PCs are hanging.
In other words, there's no risk at all there.
Yeah, there's no risk when you choose Intel.
No risk. All right, Rob. What about risk when it comes to gaming? What are we going to do about anti-cheat?
So, as a Linux gamer, one of the biggest frustrations, as you and everybody except for maybe Ken knows, is not performance. It's not the driver support, and as you already said, it is the anti-cheat. Often, Linux players run into the same wall. The game might run, Proton might work, the hardware might be more than capable, except for in Ken's case, but the anti-cheat says, no, you can't go on our online servers with Linux. And that has been one of the last major barriers really keeping Linux gamer from feeling fully equal. And that's why this new development at EA is worth keeping an eye on. So EA has posted a job listing for a senior anti-cheat engineer focused on bringing its in-house Javelin anti-cheat to Windows on ARM. okay, that part makes sense on its own, kind of, I guess, especially with, I don't know, more ARM-based gaming hardware on the horizon.
I know a certain group of people very much want that to happen. I'm not convinced that it's going to, but continue on.
Yeah, but I mean, is ARM gaming on Windows really that big? I mean, even compared to Linux on ARM, because I mean, I know of way more people that have Linux on ARM systems than Windows on ARM. I mean, nobody. Anyway, and there's a big company called Valve that's also working on Linux on ARM and gaming. So, you know, that line, the line that should, but the line, okay, so there's that part of that. But the line of this job posting that should get Linux gamers paying attention comes later on in the listing, where EA says the role will help chart a path for Javelin anti-cheat to support additional operating systems and hardware in the future, quote, such as Linux and Proton. So, I mean, that's kind of the big news here. But, now, that doesn't mean Linux support is arriving tomorrow. Windows on ARM is strangely the first priority here, which is dumb even, as a Windows user. I think that's dumb. Nobody's using Windows on ARM. Windows people are using Windows on ARM, especially not to game. Anyway, but, it's still just a hiring at this point, not a project announcement. But it does mean that EA is at least thinking seriously enough about Linux and Proton to put it into a job description. And for Linux gamers, that matters because anti-cheat has been a big, painful sticking point in modern PC gaming. Proton and the Steam Deck have helped Linux gaming grow far beyond where it was just a few years ago, but kernel-level anti-cheat systems have still blocked some of the biggest multiplayer titles, and it's been a blocker for a lot. EA itself pulled Linux and Steam Deck support for Apex Legends back in late 2024, citing security concerns around cheating on Linux. But with the Steam Deck releasing more Linux-based gaming hardware, hopefully this year, that's the plan, you would think game developers would start to pay attention to, pay a little more attention. This story suggests that at least one major publisher is starting to see the importance and look at moving forward with that. I don't know how far off it is, and like I always say, though, whatever is good for Linux gaming is good for the entire Linux ecosystem. So there's no reason it can be done. EA's looking into it, so let's. I hope they get it done because more games you can play, the better.
Yeah, I'm trying to think through how anti-cheat would actually work on Linux. Because on Windows, you've got the Windows kernel that is going to kind of be in a certain state. You can run a kernel driver and then talk to that kernel driver and have a pretty good idea that, something is not happening or is happening on your system. With a Linux anti-cheat solution, like to actually make one that would actually work.
They can't be bypassed.
Yeah, that you couldn't just trivially bypass. You would almost have to do like a secure boot system, which you could do under Linux. You can do secure boot and run only signed kernel modules. That wouldn't be the worst way to go about that.
Yeah.
Well, they have
I don't know. It's
easy anti-cheat and BattlEye, which are two anti-cheat methods that they're able to run on Linux. It's just that a lot of times game companies don't turn them on.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
so there's anti-cheat systems that all they have to do is flip a switch and say it's, we're
and I think the argument is they're not kernel level.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering, like, how effective are they on Linux? How easy or difficult is it to circumvent? Is it easier to circumvent one of those anti-cheat on Linux as opposed to on Windows? I don't know. It's not my area of expertise.
I'm not a cheater. I don't know.
I'm not a cheater.
There's a show title.
Yep, that's exactly what I was thinking. All right. Well, hey, let's talk about browsers then. Jeff is gonna go Nova on us right after we take a quick break. Then we're gonna talk about Firefox Nova right after this.
So Firefox is looking to make changes to its default look. The new design is the Nova redesign, and it has more curves and color than we have now. For those unaware, this is not the first time there's been an interface redesign of Firefox. In 2014, the Firefox interface was redesigned under the internal project name Australis, followed by Photon, and finally Proton in 2021. The new Firefox design Mozilla is currently working on, as previously stated, is called Nova. It's not yet known which Firefox version the new design where it will debut. Development is still in the very early stages. So this is pre-beta. This is, I'm not even sure it's to the alpha stage yet. The link in the article has some images to show possible directions, but these are, like I said, early in the process. They're most assuredly things are going to change, and they're only mock-ups. So they're not even implemented really yet. However, it's reasonable to assume that the mock-ups reflect at least the general intended design direction. So it'll give us some cues where they're going. Now, we can take from this how there's a lot, they're really leaning into rounded shapes. Not only are the tabs and the address bars much rounder than before, the top area, consisting of the tab bar, navigation toolbar, they form as a rounded unit, as do the sidebar launcher, the website context area, and elements on the Firefox start page. They all look kind of like floating elements, though I don't know if they actually are, but they're kind of, how they're separated a little bit. So it looks like they could be, but maybe that's simply going to be visual only. They do show vertical and horizontal tabs, but, something interesting it looks like they're thinking about is grouping tabs. Now, I don't know if that's even possible now, but it does show an image with a highlighted area which covers two tabs, which also correlate to split screens with two different web pages on them. Now, they're in the same window, though, so it's a little different than pulling them out into their own window like you can do now. So it's not a separate complete window. It's just they split the screen. Now, maybe this could be just me, my own personal opinion here, but I'm not a fan of rounding, and you're going to say, oh, I'm autistic or something, because they said, to me, the computer screen is based on square or rectangular shape, and rounding, to me anyway, generates a lot of lost space. Now, again, this is very early, so we'll see what comes out of the redesign, but I at least hope they have an opening to the public at some point for user feedback. While all the surfaces have previously been solid colors, Mozilla is now using subtle gradients in some places within Nova. The mockups also show a noticeable tendency towards violent tones. However, it cannot be ruled out that the accent color is influenced by the theme or a user setting. So, example on the screens, the example screens, they show kind of a mint green Firefox start page with a matching color scheme applied to the browser interface. We'll see how, are they playing a lot, or is that they thinking maybe that's a default? I don't know. Now, also interesting, Firefox has a compact mode where the interface takes up less space. And, it's had that for, many years. However, the feature is no longer officially supported and can only be activated through a hidden option. The mockups explicitly show a compact mode and a visible setting for it, which suggests that Mozilla may officially support such a mode again in the future. Personally, I'm a big fan of compact modes. Again, I don't like wasted space. Just jam all the data in there. So take a look at the article linked in the show notes for more details. And it also has a link to the original German blog, which covers the story. Now, and when I say German blog, it's all in German, but the pictures it's got a ton of pictures in there. So you can see a lot of the stuff they're thinking, and let us know what you think on the Discord.
So Jeff, if I'm listening, understanding right, this Nova design, you're not a big fan. So in your opinion, it's Nova, not Supernova.
No, it's not a Supernova. I'll be honest, I don't like the lighter colors because I sometimes have a hard time seeing the difference between the gradients. So I like more vivid colors so I can easily pick things out.
Contrast.
I need more contrast. Some of the buttons being rounded isn't that big of a deal, but I don't like the general UI direction where a lot of stuff is taking more and more space and they're getting big. I call it like a Duplo blocks interface. And for those who don't know or outside of the country, Duplo it's like Legos, but it's for really little kids. So they're super big and they're easy to snap together because they're monstrous.
I'll bet even after they come out with it, they'll have the option to theme your Firefox.
Oh, I'm sure.
And if they bring back compact mode, then that takes care of it. It's not spreading so much space, around that's just kind of wasted. I don't need, tons of room between my buttons.
Now, I was reading in the blog that the compact mode is no longer officially supported, but there is a hidden option that allows you to activate it.
Yeah, I haven't turned it on because I didn't realize that there was the hidden option, and two, when it's unsupported, sometimes it can be a little funky. So I would like a nice officially supported compact mode.
I gotta say, looking at this screenshot, I actually kind of like it. I do not hate this at all. I think it's cool that they're playing around with something different, and it's a unique and very different look. I don't hate it.
I don't hate it. I just want to make sure there's ways to tweak it a little better. And like I said, some of it could be theming. So if I could get the vivid colors, higher contrast, squish some of those rounded corners together. Yeah, squish some of those rounded corners together.
Squish them corners. Yeah, no, I kind of like it.
I think we've said this before in the past that Jeff likes his corners sharp, so he hurts himself or something.
Something like that. Yeah.
he likes the edge.
A sharp tool.
He likes sharp edges.
Yes. Hey, when I'm cutting wood with my chainsaw, I don't want those rounded edges. I want good sharp teeth.
That's true.
Well, it just seems like where all the rounded corners meet up, you got a little bit of dead space in there, and everything on the computer's very rectangular and squarish, and it just kind of snaps in together.
Yeah, I will say that little bit of dead space can help your eyes quickly parse what you're looking at, though. And particularly good UI design will take advantage of that. It will use that dead space very intentionally to help you parse what is what.
I like, okay, so I'm looking at this now too, and it's like very rounded. Like I like rounded corners fine, but this is more like oblonged ovals or whatever. It's more than just a full corner. It's the whole side is round.
No,
rectangle with bad. Oval corner.
It's oval, not that bad. Oh my goodness!
I'm looking at the screenshot from the show from the
blog,
from the article, and I mean, okay, right at the top, there's that tab there. Those aren't round corners. That is completely rounded on both sides of that tab where it says long page titles fade off. That is round. That's not like a corner round and a corner round. That is completely rounded side.
Yes, yes, Rob. Thank you. That is a round button, not a.
And
I can't take Rob anywhere.
It's too round. I would like Jeff.
Yeah, I would like to mention WX Romer, who said Jeff is a sharp corner dressed guy. Thank you.
It's not bad, but it's a little too round for me too, I think.
We're splicing pixels here at this point. I like it. I think it has a lot it
has potential. And these are mock-ups, so there's a long way to go yet.
All right, Ken, before we drown in Firefox rounded corners, let's talk about the 13th edition of Linux from Scratch.
Well, that's what I was going to tell you about, especially since Bobby also wrote about the release of Linux from Scratch 13.0 and also Beyond Linux from Scratch, or I got to abbreviate this, BLFS 13.0. Everyone already knows that Linux from Scratch is a project that provides step-by-step instructions for building your own custom Linux system entirely from source code. Or am I assuming too much with that statement?
Most of our audience knows what it is.
Now, according to Bobby, a key change in this release is that LFS 13.0 is the first version available exclusively as a System D edition. LFS 13.0 also includes significant upgrades to core components. It features binutils 2.46, glib 2.42, and 36 updated packages compared to the previous stable version. The base system now uses Linux kernel 6.18.10 LTS, ensuring the build instructions reflect recent kernel releases. Now, BLFS 13.0 provides instructions for installing a broad range of additional software, including desktop environments such as Gnome, KDE Plasma, XFCE, and LXQT. And as always, for further information, I do recommend reading Bobby's article.
The big thing is System D. What did Linux from Scratch use previously?
It gave you the option between System D and System V init.
SysV init is kind
Have you used that recently?
No, that's what I was just thinking about. It's been a long time.
Do you want to use that?
Not really. No, I remember parsing SysV init scripts, and some of those were gnarly.
If you want System V init scripts, there's always chaos.
Yeah. Wasn't there like a semi-official fork of Linux from Scratch that was doing the SysV init?
You could probably go back to the previous version and use it to do that fork if you really wanted it.
It was... I saw another story about this, and I thought it was one of the other guys that had worked on it was doing a fork. I can't find it now.
Well, I was just going to add in there is a group of people that really don't like System D and they want to go back to System Init.
Indeed.
I know the first time I saw System D and I was used to the old Init, I was a little like, what is this? I don't understand it because I had all those nice simple scripts before. It's still scripts, but it's just more organized to be controlled more centrally better, I think, now. It just took me a while to figure that out. And I think there's just other people who are taking a lot longer to figure that out. That's all.
And personally, I was never deep enough into the OS that it, they changed. Okay, everything still seems to work. I didn't care about that. But the hard part is when you really I like this old system. Unless you have a team of people still actively developing and pushing it forward, it just kind of gets left in the dust after a while.
Like the old system, like I was way more into the guts of Linux probably back in the day then. But I think you could boot it up into an init 0, which would be that was just a root startup, and they had all the init levels you could boot into. And
I still have that. You still have that though. That still exists with SysV or with System D.
Does it?
Yeah,
huh, I didn't know that.
I've done a boot into run level 0.
It's been so long since I have.
Finding that there's a fork from Linux for Scratch where The build method changed right around LFS 9.0. I just post the link to the GitHub for that in the show notes or in the Discord.
There's forks of everything. Doesn't mean it's going anywhere.
No, that's true.
Well, right it's now only 4 years ago since the last update.
And one contributor.
Yeah, that's the thing about these.
That's not a real fork, Ken. That's just somebody to click fork on GitHub, and I've done that before. It doesn't mean I'm maintaining a new fork of it.
I've got a fork of a bash file.
Yeah,
I think Jonathan originally created the bash file.
It could be.
Well, and we actually talked about this, I think 2 weeks ago or a month ago, about how there's a lot of people that fork something or start a distro and then realize, oh, it's easy to fork it. It's hard to maintain it. And people burn out. And that's where you get these distributions that just wind up kind of dying on the vine because it's just like, whoa, there's a lot of work every day to make this function.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a lot of work. It's easy to fork, but it's hard to maintain.
Yeah.
I was looking at some of the other projects that the person that did the forked LFS has. And he's got another one that's muscle-LFS, Linux from scratch using muscle as libc.
Oh, I forget what that stands for. It's like an embedded libc.
And then there's a Singlay built muscle Linux from scratch that he's got as a fork, or in his as one of the projects he's done.
Yeah, I'm looking to see where I saw the Linux from scratch news to see if I could figure out who it is that I saw was doing a fork of it. And boy, I just can't find it. If I find it, I'll put it in the show notes. It's a newer one than the one that you found, Ken.
Okay.
But anyway,
3.5 years old with 2 maintainers.
Something like
But
that.
Here's a good article for anybody that wants to know why you don't see more people forking Linux versus just copying another distro.
Yeah. All right, let's move into some command line tips. We have one more break to take, and then as soon as we get back from that, we're going to let Rob talk about WayDroid. I'm not sure this is quite command line or quite Linux, but we'll let him get away with it, and we'll jump to that right after this.
All right, so I don't know what you mean this isn't a command line or Linux. This is absolutely a Linux application that you can start with the command line. In fact, I got a command line terminal up here that I started with myself in CachyOS. So my command is WayDroid. And what WayDroid is it's the application to run Android in Linux. So it's not Wine, where Wine is a translation layer. And I don't know if it's actually an emulator or what, but you are running a full Android system, so it's an emulator of sorts, I guess. And one of the key features of this is the word way in there, which means you have to have Wayland to run it. Sorry, excellent guys. So anyway, WayDroid. But the default install does not have the Google Play Store, so it makes it a lot harder to do a lot of things that we're used to doing, but it may be the way we want to do it in the future. But the way I did it is with the Google Play Store. And that's just because I don't know, it's just easier to get apps. So for those looking, this at the bottom here, I just clicked on the application I already have running this WayDroid. This is an Android here. So I did put some things because it wasn't necessarily easy to get up. I had to install WayDroid, and then I had to initialize it with the GAPPS. I guess that's Google Apps. I didn't even think about that, what that is, but basically a sudo WayDroid init-s GAPPS, and that's going to install it with Google Apps and or the Google Play Store. So for those looking, I got the Google Play Store right there. I can open that up. And then I had to do a sudo systemctl enable -- now space WayDroid - container. And then I did a WayDroid session start. And then as you saw on the screen, I did a WayDroid space show - full UI. Now, initially, the Google App Store doesn't work. It says it's not a certified Google device, which it's pretty easy to do. I'm not going to tell you the command. You'll have to look in the notes. And really, I would find something online to help you with this. But there is a command to get the Android ID out of it. It's a sudo WayDroid shell SQL-like command, basically to pull it out of the database. And then you can go to google.com/android/uncertified, and you can register that Google ID, and then it's all going to work. Well, I also had firewall problems. I had no internet. This is even back further. So I had to open up the firewall, which is a CacheOS. It's a UFW firewall. But after that, I was able to get it all working, and I can look at and install whatever Android app from the Play Store I want. Well, not whatever. The first app I looked for, game I looked for, said this will not work on your device. So there are limitations. I was able to install other things and play around, but that's pretty much the way. If you need to run Android on your Linux device, WayDroid is the way.
That's cool. That's very cool. Now, I bet it does not have like Widevine, and so DRM stuff's not going to work. So, for instance, I would imagine that Netflix would not play.
Well,
I don't know if
I will try that, and I will post to my Mastodon and Blue Sky if it works or not. So follow me there, and you'll find out if it works. I'll put it in the Discord too.
I was going to say, you got to put it on Discord. I'm not following you on those other places.
You already follow me on Mastodon. You just don't.
Yeah, but I don't ever check it.
And while you guys do that,
I have a Mastodon account.
And while you guys do that, I'll just run Netflix natively on Linux.
Yeah, there's no reason to, but it's still an interesting experiment just to see, because maybe there's some other program that I may want it.
It wasn't that long
Android
ago that
only
Netflix
application that you need to run.
There's some games that are Android only that don't have native ports. I'm thinking of one that I'm slightly addicted to. Neither here nor there. All right, Jeff is up next with, speaking of systemd, Journal D is part of that, and he's got a Journal CTL tip for us.
Yeah, and we've covered Journal CTL a while. We've covered it a couple times over the past, but this one I just covered because this week's command is something I needed. So I was noticing some errors when booting and shutting down. And the errors, it was for a USB device that was having issues communicating. It gave me a USB 4 port 2 location, but running LS USB wasn't a help because it didn't match the error. It didn't give me any mapping. And I don't have a USB 4 port. And even the manual for the motherboard was no help. Nothing matched. There was no hardware mapping. Well, that's when I found the Journal CTL --F, or you can also put Journal CTL -- follow. It's kind of like a tail command to follow the systemd journal, only when the log file is closed and new one's open, this one keeps going. So it's just always giving you the output. Now, the follow option will only show the log entries of what the user has permissions for. So if you run it as your normal self, or if you run it as root, we'll give you a little different output. So I ran it as root using the -F, and you can also use a vertical bar, which is the pipe option, and grep error -I. So then you're only getting the error messages, because sometimes you plug things in and out, you do things. It's going to give you kind of little notifications that there aren't errors. It's just telling you what's going on. So in my case, I did that and I could see the errors. and I could leave the screen up because I was getting an error about every 3 seconds or 4 seconds. Then I could plug and unplug USB devices till I was able to find the offending one and take care of the problem. So I just thought, that would be kind of a handy little tip that was very applicable to me this week.
Yeah, very cool. With Journal CTL, you can also do a -u and then your unit name, which brings you to a very fun command that you have to be careful with. And that is if you want to follow a particular unit, it's -fu. And then the name of the unit.
You want to explain what a unit is?
That's the name of a service, basically.
And you can see where we first covered it if you go back and listen to episode 51, excuse me.
Yeah, we've talked about Journal CTL quite a bit over the years, but the -f is super helpful. All right, Ken, what is Music Brain's Picard?
Well, this week, as you mentioned, I am covering a cross-platform music tagger that I use to update the metadata for my audio files. I use it to organize my music collection. It can rename music files and sort them into a folder structure exactly as I want. You have a variety of plugins that are available to use in assisting you. You can even write your own custom plugin if any of the available plugins don't meet your needs. Now, Music Brain Picard supports a wide range of audio formats and can also look up an entire CD for you. And let me go ahead and bring up the application so you can see what it looks like. I want to go to the About first. I'm running version 2.13.3. I've got it installed via Flatpak myself. But as you can see, I don't know if that's big enough for everybody to read, but it's got a long list of formats that it supports.
Basically all of them.
Any type of audio format. And you've got a help, of course, that you can use to get help, view your recent activity history, a support forum that you can access. You can even report a bug that you may come across from within the application itself.
Yes.
Basically, what you do is you take, you've got a directory tree shown over here. And as you can see, I've got a directory tree for going into my albums. I've started ripping some of my comedy albums, as well as the album. I want to say it's actually a total of 5 album vinyl records that's part of this album called This Was Radio. And one of them has audio file called Great Leaders. That's about 4 minutes and 33 seconds long, where you have snippets from Franklin Delano, President Roosevelt, Chancellor Adolf Hitler, Benito Mussolini, Prime Minister Winston Churchill, where you can hear where they're doing various speeches, like President Roosevelt's first inaugural address. And if you're looking down at the bottom, you can see that it's got tags for title, artist, album, track number, length, and comments that I've entered based on the information off of the vinyl record itself. And you've got the option of where, when you do it, you can actually create new tags. I'm going to go to one that I've already done. And here you can see that there's a lot more tags that can be set up. And some of them even indicate that they've got IDs that are used within the Music Brains database. Now, this is a cloud database that you can contribute to through this application.
Yeah. Now, does Music Brains Picard, does it let you rip, or is this just for managing tags?
Well, you can, it's primarily for managing tags, but you can go in and read from the CD-ROM for getting the information. You don't actually use it to rip.
Okay. So it's for getting your metadata right on your existing library. One of the things I saw that it did here that I thought was super cool is it uses the Acoustic ID audio fingerprinting system. And so if you've got a song and you don't know what it is, it can do a lookup in a crowdsourced database of audio fingerprints and try to figure out what it is and then match it and give you all of the correct metadata for it. It's super cool.
Yes. In fact, you can even say with this one, I can do a lookup in browser. And let me go ahead and bring that tab over here.
And it'll bring you right to the entry in the Music Brains database. Cool.
Mm-hmm. And you can even create a account for you to keep your database in. For example, I can look that up. And it's going to, if I wanted to, I could log in. But.
And then what? Mark that this is part of your library?
Yeah.
Cool.
That way you've got a database that you can access from anywhere of what you actually have.
Yeah.
What you've got entered so far.
Right. Neat stuff. All right. I've got a quick tip. Not exactly a command line tip, although it's definitely something you work with on the command line. And this is something I ran into this week, and that is block devices and character devices. And I had to go and refresh my memory on what exactly those are and how they're different. And these are both files, pseudo files that you will find down in /dev. Well, block devices, those are things like your hard drive, your CD-ROM drive, your mounted loop devices, basically anything that you could mount or that you could open with FSCK or FSTab. Those sorts of things are your block devices. And technically, the way this works is your driver communicates with these by sending entire blocks of data back and forth. So it reads a block of data off the disk, it writes a block of data to the disk. And then the other kind of device that you're going to find in there, the other kind of file, is the character device. And technically speaking, you interact with those by sending and reading a character at a time. Now, that's not entirely accurate because you'll sometimes you'll write more than one character at a time, write a whole line. You can write up to 1024 characters. But you interact with those character files much more like they were a text file, as opposed to the block device, which doesn't show up as anything like a text file at all. And so, block devices, you have things like obviously hard drives, USB cameras will also show up that way, some other things. But then character devices, you have serial ports, parallel ports, sound cards. Those are the three examples that are given here in this page. I'll also say that your modern GPIO drivers, those are character devices. And coming from the old way that Raspberry Pi used to do it to the new way that everybody's doing GPIO, that Linux says GPIO now, I had to learn a decent bit about these character devices. And so this is a fairly interesting difference between these two. I think maybe next week we're going to come back and talk about system calls, because that is the sort of the third way that you interact with your system. And it does also interact with these two things, where you might write something to a block device or a character device and then make a system call to do something with it. So interesting stuff, looking around a little bit in the under the hood way that Linux works. So there we go. All right, that is the show. I'm going to let the guys plug whatever they want to. Rob already plugged his Mastodon and Blue Sky, so he's not allowed to mention those, but he can plug everything else.
Well, I never told you where to find my Mastodon and Blue Sky. And those are on my website first, Robert, at least the easiest way, my website, robertpcampbell.com. And on there, you'll find links to my LinkedIn, Twitter, Blue Sky, Mastodon, and a place to donate a coffee if you like. And you know what? I'm going to give you all freebies so you don't have to get on my Mastodon this week. I installed Netflix, installed fine. And when I tried to play, it said didn't work for the device. I tried Paramount Plus, installed fine. Everything looked like it was working, but nothing played. I don't know. I am also running that in a VM, so there could be something about video acceleration. But
emulator and a VM on a hard drive within a host.
Yeah,
within a VM.
Yeah, that is what it is. So I don't know. Anyway, either way, it'd be cool if you come connect with me. I did get a game installed that is loading up right now, though, and it's Battle Cats. It is a game I've played in the past. I know one of my kids likes to play it. And yeah, nobody reads that stuff. You just click agree and hit next. But
you never saw that South Park, did you? Okay.
you just gave away your firstborn.
So yeah, anyway, yeah, come connect with me. That's how you do it.
Fun stuff. All right. And I think we'll go Ken next.
Well, I've got a link in our show notes to an article by Roine Bertelsen, where he writes about 3 mistakes that even experienced users, including myself, can and do make over time. Go ahead and read it to find out what they are.
I see the 3 of them, and yes, those do hit home. I was looking at one of those in one of my systems just the other day going, where did all of this come from? All right, and Jeff?
Nothing much to plug other than, hey, I got a new bookcase. If you're on the video, you can see I've upgraded my set. Other than that, I just have a haiku. Seeing my great fault through darkening blue windows, I begin again. Have a great week, everybody.
All right. Appreciate you guys being here. I will say that if you want to follow me, there's of course Hackaday. That's where Floss Weekly is at. We're skipping a week this week because I am going to be at Embedded World. And if you happen to be around, we're in Hall 3, booth 3-652. And if somebody is there from the show, if one of our listeners is there, you absolutely should stop by. And I think I can get you a business card, maybe some swag. I don't know if we have swag or not. I'm not in charge of the swag. But anyway, I'll be glad to say hi and would love to meet anybody there. Other than that, just want to say to everybody listening and watching, thank you. Whether you are audio or video, whether you get us live on the download, we appreciate it. And we'll be back next week on the Untitled Linux Show.